All right, I'm here to talk to you about the power of love, romance, and sex in games. I'm adding those two as well. But as you said, I'm just going to get a real quick content warning as well. Some sexual themes will be touched upon, so to speak. And there will be stylistic images of real-life vaginas, just so you know. But to be honest, they're 20 by 30 pixels, and that's that big. But of course, it looks like this when it's blown up in Bing. All right, also disclaimers, let's get it out. I'm going through a lot of games through my presentation here, but still, it's far from an exhaustive list of games. There's so many good games out there. We heard Robert Yang earlier as well that I'm going to just quickly mention. There's so many cool games, and I can't go through all of them, so I apologize if you think something else should have been mentioned and it didn't get. And as well, I'm giving an overview. I'm not doing super specific thing. If you think it's too rudimentary, then I apologize for that. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't yet. So that's why I'm doing this. And as well, I'm a white heterosexual man. I'm just going to say that up front. Just so you know, of course, I will have those glasses on, but I'm trying to be as diverse as possible, of course. But that also means that I know my limitations. I don't have a very big knowledge in queer theory, for instance, so just so you know. But my mission with this talk is to tell you why you should care about love in games. And I will do that by showing you how diverse these subjects truly are. And hopefully that will inspire you to explore these subjects yourself. And a little side mission of mine is to give you at least one 80s, 90s pop song earworm now that it is Friday. So let's get started. The power of love. All right, it's only gonna get worse. All right, just a real quick background so you know who I am. My name is Patrick Jarnfelt, as you said. And I guess you could say that I'm both an artist, an organizer, curator, and a game developer. I founded the Copenhagen Game Collective together with a bunch of people, and we do a lot of things. We're kind of known for like some move controller things, some other weird stuff, and also for organizing some events, like for instance the Wood Festival, which is a play festival for play and games in urban spaces. And the Lyst Summit, of course, that I will also be talking about, a summit that is focusing solely on romance, love, and sex in games. And then I also started the Knap Nok Games with the current owners of that. They're known for Spin the Bottle and Affordable Space Adventure. But then I went off and did my own stuff, and now I've started a company called The Lovable Hat Cult. And I'll get back to that. But in the beginning with Copenhagen Game Collective, we started that to kind of explore the fringes of games and to experiment and push the medium as an artistic medium. Actually, one of the first games we developed, or the first game we developed, was a motion controller-enabled sex game called Darkroom Sex Game. And it's a two-player game where people have motion controllers in their hands and they have to look each other in the eye and communicate with body language when to swing, and then they will swing in a rhythm, and they have to build up that rhythm until they reach the climax. And it showed us something very interesting. It showed us, this is an old game, it's 2008, when we started the collective, and it showed that games can tackle these kind of subjects, first of all, and also that there's something else there. Like, it's the first time we kind of took a computer game, a digital game, and took it out of the computer screen and had it purely social. And the weirdness and awkwardness that gave. So we were very interested in trying to explore these subjects. And we also wanted to explore these kind of raunchy subjects. And people were like, but don't do it, because if you do it wrong, it can kill your career. And so we did it anyways, because we don't care about careers. No, because we were going to do it right, of course, and we want to do this right. We think it's important that we are having a space where we can explore these subjects. So we created a summit called the Lyst Summit. Lyst is the Danish word for desire. It's not really the same as desire, because you can say, do you want to go fishing? That's also lust. So it like encompasses many more things. It's not lust, as a lot of English people think it is, English-speaking people. There's this other Danish game designer that gave a talk at GDC called Default Games by Default Humans, Henrike Lotte. And it's a great talk about like this game jamming culture where people are typically doing one type of game, and it's very also like homogeneous group. So it's like very typical. She calls them the default humans, which is her way of saying white heterosexual cis male. And I agree with her that there's a lot of that in the gaming community, but I want to take it a step further and say that there's a lot of just one-sidedness in the game community. Like, we all know this. Here it's different. We are, Amaze is made to also explore artistic games and the fringes of games. But when you go to a game jam, you cannot, as she outlines, like try to tackle subjects like pregnancy, menstruation, or like subjects like that. So we wanted to make a space where it's totally free and safe and comfortable for you to explore these subjects or other subjects that you want to explore. And here's just a little trailer. Yeah, you kind of get it. So we have a one-day symposium where a lot of inspiring speakers are coming and giving talks in topics like this year we're going to have polyamory in games and how that is kind of like working on different projects. Yeah, and we had last year we had a homosexual indie porn star talking about his inspirations working. And playing games, and how he sees the future of VR and games, also as a person in the porn industry. So it's very varied. Yeah. And I just want to show you one of the game, and then it's followed by a game jam, of course, as you see here. This is playtesting. No, yeah, I think this is playtesting of one of the games. So it's like all kinds of games. This is a physical game, or they're just having fun. This is the playtesting of the game. Okay, whatever. That's the game. And I want to show you another game.
Sludge! 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 So, I have videos. They're about 30 seconds. There is always a kind of an act. Sometimes it's an insect, sometimes it's a small brand.
I will let it be up to your fantasy what this game could be about. But...
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more.
Boom, headshot! Boom, headshot!
Exactly. Baby, don't hurt me no more. In my adolescence, my friends and I, we used to have LAN parties. We used to go to a friend's place, set up all these computers, and then just play all night. And usually it would be Counter-Strike. And even though I liked really the social aspects of this and the camaraderie that was associated with it, I really didn't enjoy the competitiveness people got into and kind of the nastiness that ensues. I wanted to try other things, but it was like really prevalent with the Counter-Strike. And I understand that people like this and there's competitions and esports, that's all cool. But when you then see this survey made based on over 140,000 gamers, where they ask their interest in competitive games, it like steadily declines over age. And we know now that that the average age of playing is actually 35 years old, all the way up there. And it's like minus in the interest. And when you then see, this is Feminist Frequency that saw the E3 games of 2015 and broke them down into combat versus non-combat games. Of course, this is the displayed games, so it's mostly AAA games, and it's different in the indie world, and all of you making games here is different story. But still, the mainstream and the AAA, 76% of them, you have to shoot somebody in the head, right? Headshot. And on top of that, of course, the gender representation is also horrible. We all know that. You can see it there. There's actually more non-humans than, 5 times more non-humans than women. And when I say that, I think that it's because we need more love in games. People, they don't really understand it. And I think that's because we have a limited view of love. And in fact, the ancient Greeks, they had many more definitions, diverse definitions of love. They divided it into 4 main categories of love, where the English meaning of love is typically associated with eros, the romantic love, the love that you would have for a spouse or multiple spouses, if you're into that. But there's also storge, which is the love that you would have for a child or a child for a parent, which is characterized by like strong bonds. Or philia, called the brotherly love, or let's call it sibling love, let's be honest, which is friendship. Like you can have a very strong, loving relationship, platonic relationship, right? That's also love. I have love for a friend. And then, of course, since it's ancient Greek, you also have the love for God and the love God has for man. We don't really care about that.
What's love got to do? It's got to do with it.
But what's love got to do with it? AKA, why should I care? Well, my argument is that it's something that we can all relate to. We've all had these feelings in one way or another. If it is being head over heels for somebody, Lena. Or if it is having lost somebody and having that gap in you, right? Or if it's the love for a child or love for your parents, we all have it, and it's something that we can relate to, which means that you can also relate to the character and relate to the story more. It's also something that can mature the medium. Let's be honest, it's an area that is totally unexplored. Not totally, but very unexplored. So if we want to be a respected medium, we have to look into these. And if nothing else, it's to expand the target audience. Put your business glasses on. There are so many people out there that want this. They have to settle with Jurassic Heart or Hatofelt Boyfriend. Although I love Hatofelt Boyfriend, where you have to date pigeons that are all very different in personality. There's so much more you can do, which I'll go through. Like for instance, in Firewatch, it's not solely about love, but love gives the character depth. When I played this game, I had no doubt that this was real people with real conversations. Of course they're not, but they were so well written, and I engaged with the story because the character excuse me, Henry had so much more depth to him. In the beginning, you play a dialogue selection tree kind of thing. You play as Henry, whose wife has been diagnosed with early onset of dementia. And through a series of dialogue selections, you traverse this story, and then you also play some game elements where that are memories of what happened, of this tragic backstory. And that culminates in this moment where there's no other choice than she gets worse, which is just, ouch, why did you do that to me? And that gives that character a flaw, or not a flaw, but like depth that made it so much more believable. I'm gonna skip that one. You can also make a story about real life loss. That Dragon Cancer is about these parents that made a game about their child actually getting cancer and how they have to cope with that. It's a beautiful and moving story, and you can engage much more with it because you know that it's also real and it's an earnest and honest story. And even though that it has its flaws and it has gotten some bad rep because of some things I don't want to get into, I still applaud them for trying or to actually make this game. That's very, very beautiful, I think. But love doesn't have to be about loss or the fear of loss. It can also be about just, for instance, some games that we're developing in the Lovable Hat Cult, one that is about to release, La Petite Mort, and The Circle. The Circle is about this abstract circle, and it's an abstract game. You play as the circle that has a big gaping area. Yes, it's kind of like Pac-Man, I know. And it thinks that it's incomplete. It feels incomplete, and it's going out into the world. It's journeying out to find that piece that will magically fit in its mouth and make it perfectly round, so it can roll perfectly. Because as it's rolling now, it like kind of humps, and it's not rolling perfectly. It's it's flawed, like everyone. And as it goes out, it will find different pieces. It's like that piece doesn't fit perfectly, but then maybe another piece will fit perfectly and it will be perfectly round, but then it rolls really fast and it forgets to stop and smell the flowers, and maybe that was not perfect. Maybe something else was perfect for it, or maybe it was already perfect in itself, and so on and so forth. But we didn't only come here to talk about sex.
Let's talk about sex, baby.
I mean, to only talk about love. Let's talk about sex. Yeah, that's how it was. All right, let's talk about sex. Typically in games, this is Witcher 3, you get sex as kind of a reward. It's a goal, and then it's kind of like a vending machine where you have to put in some work, and then you go on enough side quests, or you choose the correct dialogue options, and then in the end, here you go, here's your sex. You're rewarded with sex, and it's kind of like a trophy that you can get and be happy that you got. And it's also very typically male-oriented, and it's boring. I mean, there's so much more you can do with it. I understand that some people have this kind of fantasy, and let them have the fantasy, but let's see if there's not more we can do. For instance, Life is Strange is not about sex, but it takes this thing with the having to choose the right dialogue and turning that around. And in episode 4, you're actually trying to get closer to this girl, and it's more focusing on the courtship and more of their friends, and what if I say the wrong thing, and what if I ruin our friendship? Should I even try to ruin our friendship? And it's much more about that process. But there's also so many intimate subjects that you could talk about. Like, for instance, the first time you had sex. Like, how did that feel? That can also be very awkward. Or sex and gender. It doesn't have, so it can also be about gender. Or sex as pleasure in itself. Or different kinks and consents. So let's see a couple of examples. Your first time. This is one of the games that was developed during the Lyst Game Jam, and I love to talk about this one because it's super abstract, but this is a sex game. Okay, you can hardly see it, but down there in the corner are two people looking up on the screen, and there's these colorful patterns, and in the background, which you can hardly see, are dark patterns that you have to match. And the beautiful part is that these two people are playing together. It's cooperative, of course, like sex, and you have one Xbox controller where you have to press the button. If you press a button, one of these things will move out. And another button will, for instance, modulate it and rotate it around. And you have to press so many of them that you cannot do it alone. You have to have a friend to help you to do it. And then you're holding a button and saying like, no, try over here, no, press there. Yeah, keep holding. And then you, at the end, reach the climax of the game. And it's just such a brilliant little mechanic that exemplifies the first time, I think. And it has to be tried. And sex doesn't have to mean sexy. It can also refer to the sex that you are awarded with birth and the gender that associates that. It's often a very intimate subject and of course also a very taboo subject in some senses, especially for those people that fall outside the heteronormative and gender binary systems. And one really cool example is Ananthropy's Dysphoria. It's an abstract and autobiographical game by Ananthropy, where you play a series of minigames that is her diary that revolves around her experiences with hormone replacement therapy. And the minigames range from feeling judged in the female stall bathroom to having like sensitive nipples after a week of estrogen pills. And it's all very honest and earnest. And what she says here is, a video game lets you set up goals for the player and make her fail to achieve them. A reader cannot fail a book. It's an entirely different level of empathy. And that's another really powerful part about games and love in games, or these subjects in games, is that you can tell and you can try to make people understand. You can write a story and try to get people to understand. But in a game, they will experience it themselves in a way. And that is a completely different level of empathy. But sex can also be pleasure in itself. This is one of the games that we're developing that's coming out. It's called La Petite Mort. It's the French word, French saying for the little death, and it's a French euphemism for the orgasm. And I just found it kind of poetic, and we had to have it as the title because it's so fitting. It's like, yeah, you see the light, and it and it's an abstract game that is about stimulating the vulva, designed, of course, for touch devices. Here's a video. It's a musical exploration game with 4 different levels, composed by 4 different music composers. So it's much more of a music experience than actually a game. It's an homage to the vulva and made to demystify the female masturbation and pleasuring. Often games that tackle these subjects are about like how quickly can you get the woman to come, and they're very male oriented, and there's a timer and like, oh, look at me, I got 7.3 seconds, or like 7.37 seconds because they're so precise. And that's not the point of this. The point of this is to have it as a journey in itself, to have the pleasuring as pleasurable. So like real life, there's no explanation of how to play, there's no high score, there's no timer. It's kind of is about you listening and responding correctly. And as you do, the music develops. And you should not go too fast or use too many fingers. And you have to try it because it's something weird happens when you're enforcing the player to move slowly and caressing the screen. It actually weirdly turns really erotic. So I have it, and you're welcome to come and try it. But kinks and consents is also something that you can talk about, kind of group them together for some reason. But another game that we're currently developing, but is in early idea development, is to make this kind of surrealistic painting that is also a physics toy, kind of like an erotic windowsill, if you know a windowsill game, where you have to interact with all the elements, but you basically have to pleasure them. But you have to also figure out what is it that all these characters and objects are turned on by. And it's not always self-evident. And you also have to listen and respect the boundaries. That's the whole point. And all of these will be inspired by real life fetishes and kinks and so on. And of course, that also teaches you about consent, hopefully. And other people that are focusing on things like this, Naomi Clark and Robert Yang, they both are here, super cool. Consentical and all of the games Robert Yang was talking about, so that's super cool. Talk to them about that. So yeah, that's it. In conclusion, love, romance, and sex are very diverse subjects. I hope you understand that. It can reach from fatherly or motherly love, for that matter, to gender dysphoria, to sex as pleasure itself, to consent, and so much more. It's a revolution that we need to have, and it's a revolution that hopefully you will be part of. And by now, you probably have an 80s, 90s pop song earworm, and if not,
That's the power of love. That's the power of love.
Thanks.